Alright, in 3.3 we're going to start learning about the slope. Now what a slope does is it characterizes a line. Either tells you if the line increases, decreases, or if it has a slope of 0 or if it's undefined. So basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be finding the slope. Now the slope is basically referenced as the letter m. And to find the slope we use this equation y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. So if we could identify points, what we could do is just plug it into this equation and find our slope. So by looking at this line here, we know that this point is x is 0 and y is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And by looking at this point, we know here that x is 1, 2, 3, 4, and y is 0. Remember, when we look at an ordered pair, it's x, y. So now we could do is label this is x1, y1. This point is x2, y2. It's important that you make sure if this is x1, that is y1. This is x2, that's y2. Now we could have written them the other way. This could have been your x2, y2. This could have been your y2 or your y1, x1, y1. Either way would have been fine. So now we just plug it into our equation here. We're going to replace my y2 is what? 0. Minus, what's your y1? 5. Over our x2. Minus your x1, 0. Work that out, we get negative 5 over 4. See, this cannot be simplified anymore, so this is our slope. We have a negative slope, which makes sense because the slope is going down. So you'll see another problem where instead of them giving you the graph, they're just going to ask you to find the slope, and they're going to give you your points. So, do the same thing. Here you're given 1 point, there you're given another point. Let's just label. Say that's x1, y1. So this must be x2, that must be y2. Remember our equation, this will be an equation that you will have to have memorized before you take your test, as well as your final. Okay, we just plug everything in now. y2, negative 4 minus your y1 is 0 over your x2, 0 minus your y1 is 9. What do we get here? Negative 4 over negative 9. These negatives will cancel out, and you'll just be left with a positive slope there. Okay, so now what we're going to do is here they're telling us to find the slope and they give us an equation. If you look at our previous two examples, there was no equation at all. Here we had a line. We were able to find a slope of this line by identifying the points and plugging it into our equation. Same thing here. We were not given an equation, just 2 points. With those 2 points, we could just plug it into our equation and we get our line here. Here they're not giving us any points at all. We're going to learn something new today. Our equation y equals mx plus b is known as our slope-intercept equation. The m stands for your slope. And we'll start learning next section that the B stands for your y-intercept. So, as long as we have some equation, like you see this one, that has a y and an x, we can get y by itself, and we'll find that our slope, or the m, is the number in front of your x. So the whole idea is to get y by itself. When we have y by itself, we have a slope-intercept equation. So how do we get y by itself here? We just divide by 5. Divide this other side by 5. That will cancel. We'll be left with y equals, remember there's like a 1 in front of this x. 1 over 5x plus 2. Now we have it in slope-intercept form, where y is by itself. And by looking, whatever number is in front of your x will be your m. So here, 1/5 is in front of our x. Therefore, our m, or our slope, is 1/5. So this is a little different problem because here, also they want us to find a slope. But if you look at this, this is just x equals 7. Or negative 7, I'm sorry. And remember I said, as long as it's in y equals mx plus b, or the y is by itself, we can find our slope. It'll be whatever's in front of the x. Here there's no y at all. Therefore, our slope will be undefined. Why? Because there's no y in the given equation. Here they're telling us to give the slope of each line, then determine if it's parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So for it to be parallel, the slopes must equal each other. And for it to be perpendicular, we're going to notice that our slopes will be the reciprocal of each other. So as an example, if a slope, not only the reciprocal, but we also notice the opposite in sign. If we have a slope of 2/3, our other slope must be, this is positive, it must be a negative, and the reciprocal, you just flip it. If our slope is 5, then it must be opposite, negative, and it's like 5 over 1, so the reciprocal would be 1 over 5. These are two examples where they are perpendicular. So just like before, as long as we get it to be y equals mx plus b, we could identify the slopes. Let's look at our first equation. 3x plus 2y equals 4. So subtract 3x from both sides. 2y equals negative 3x plus 4. Divide 2 in order to get y by itself. You get negative 3 over 2x plus 2. Here we see that our m, our slope, negative 3 over 2. Let's do the same thing with our second equation. Just erase this over here. Give me some room. Alright, so let's get y by itself. Subtract 12x. Subtract 12x. That will cancel. End up with 8y. Negative 12x. Now we just divide both sides by 8. Y equals negative 12 over 8x. So here we see our m is negative 12 over 8. But that can be reduced to negative 6 over 4, which could even be further reduced to the negative 3 over 2. Here we see our slopes are the same, so this is an example of parallel lines. So, a word problem. It says, using a graph, find the rate of change of the tuition and fees at a private four-year university. One thing that I want to make sure you understand, rate of change is just a fancy way of saying slope. So once again, they just want us to find the slope. So here we get all these points. Pick any 2 points you want. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick this point, because like we learned in example 1 and 2, if we know the points, we can just plug it into our equation and find a slope. Looks like this point here is 16,000, and that's 95. This must be 96. 1996. This point right there looks to be 15,000 and 1995. So we plug it back into our equation. Y2 minus Y1, X2 minus X1. Call this X1, Y1. Always recommend you to label, okay? X2, Y2. We have 15,000 minus 16,000 over 1995 minus 1996 should give us here negative 1,000 or negative 1, or in other words, 1,000. So that is your review on 3.3.